What is going on, good people of the Instant Classic Wrestling Podcast, world and land and universe? I don't know which one we were going to do, but nonetheless, welcome back. We got a little discussion here. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of professional wrestling and where it's going, and a little bit of like kind of, and I guess when I posed it to Casey as a kind of discussion and topic of discussion, I mentioned it in kind of the breath of what's wrong with wrestling. Are you okay?
Basically, you mentioned it in the most vague way possible.
Yeah, I did, but that was like what came to me because I've been like in discussions with some of my friends who are more like casual fans, who are really big fans during, of course, the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, and the Monday Night Wars and all of that. And like even watching some of the old stuff on the network, where like the booking was just so much different, and like the way the storylines were conveyed was just so much different. And even now, I'm watching like storylines like Randy Orton and Edge, which I think is the best storyline they got going. But then other people are like, it's just so serious. I'm like, isn't that what you want? Isn't that what you want out of a storyline in a way? Like, yes, you want your funny, like more than what meets the eye storylines, but a lot of, and especially, when we look at some of the best wrestling that we get from the AEWs of the world and some of the good stuff we get from WWE and even from NXT, a lot of the best stuff we've had is like, I'm better than you, let's go at it. Like, it was that simple. There was obviously underlying things within it, but that was the simple premise of it was, I'm better than you, or you can't win, you never can win big matches. Like, it was simple stuff, but simple, like serious, sporty type stuff that enticed us. I found myself watching yesterday, last night on the network, some of the old NXT matches because some of my friends, we got together, we were just talking about how, NXT and WWE are just so different, and how like faces in NXT were heels and are heels on the main roster now, and crazy stuff like that. And it was very interesting because to hear from casual fans about it kind of like gives a different feel to it. And I even talked to Casey a little bit before this, and I'm gonna go ahead and get his initial thoughts in here. But I talked to him a little bit before this, kind of about maybe doing a part two with some casual fans and seeing their thoughts. Because they're the ones that WWE is, I think, failing to bring in, or AEW or Impact or whoever it may be, New Japan, whoever it may be, are failing to bring in is those type of fans. But then it's interesting to see that's what they're actually interested in. Some of these casual fans are really interested in the wrestling aspect of it. Some of my friends were really into like the way Shinsuke Nakamura does a lot of his moves, and really into like AJ Styles and Seth Rollins and these like workhorse type guys. And I think we've always kind of said, and it's almost like a running joke, but it's almost a little true in a way too, that wrestling doesn't draw, right? We've always talked about how the storylines are kind of the big things, the big wacky storylines. Even in the Attitude Era was the big craziness of it. Was it really the wrestling of it? But any initial thoughts, I guess, before we kind of, I guess we'll kind of pinball off each other if we think of some other things.
I mean, first of all, as for the part two, I might actually try to see if I can get one of my buddies that actually one of the indie guys that I work with to kind of get that aspect too, because we can get then kind of three different aspects. We can get like the casual fan, we can get the more into it fan that watches regularly, and then we can get like thoughts from guys that are actually working and kind of look at wrestling from a different perspective. I mean, like myself as well, I also look at it now from a different perspective as a worker. But I think one of the big issues is, and I don't mean this in like a derogatory way towards fans, but the fans are a lot of the issue, I think, because they always want more and more and more and like more crazy stuff and this and that. And there's kind of a running joke in the business, and it's not necessarily a joke, but it's a real thing where it's a term called super indie bullshit. And what that is the super kicks, the suicide dives, all this like stuff that it gets a pop, but it's not really doing anything for the match storytelling in the match. It's not doing anything to actually bring substance to the show. There's I somebody told gave it to me this way is if you go to a wrestling show and every single match has a suicide dive or a super kick party or something like that, what makes any of those special? What makes any of those important? You're not going to leave that show and be like, oh man, that 37th super kick, that was the one. Like after a while, it's just like it kind of, you get oversaturated. I think that's the thing. It's oversaturation with the big stuff that people want to see, and it kind of goes back to and we've talked about this before too, where like the simple things are boring to fans anymore. You look back the 80s, Hogan did a drop or did a leg drop, and that finished matches. I can't remember the last time I actually saw a leg drop in a match.
Yeah.
Like you learn it in wrestling school, but I honestly cannot remember the last time I've actually seen a leg drop done. I mean, except for maybe like an apron leg drop, but like an actual leg drop in a match, I can't remember the last time I've seen it done.
Well, it's interesting too. It's interesting too. You say that because and even we went on a Rabbit podcast too, the TP3 podcast, and we were talking kind of about our top wrestlers and whatever. But it's funny, because when we were kind of talking about the criteria of everything, Hulk Hogan was one of those guys who couldn't wrestle. Whereas in the 80s, what Hulk Hogan did was freaking, ridiculous. What Hulk Hogan did for his size and for, to be as athletic as he was for the time. I mean, I don't know if he was ever young. He's always seemed like he's been old, but like what he was doing back then was like, whoa, like you said, it was the simple stuff that kind of really put Hogan over. It was slamming Andre the Giant. Something that always is like this big deal that somebody this feat of strength or whatever. It's very interesting because now, like you said, we're not seeing those simple moves finish matches. You're not even seeing anything as simple as like a Stern finishing a match, or something like that. It's got to be something crazy. It's got to be something off the wall. And that's very interesting, that you brought that up.
Well, and also speaking of finishers, I'm sure a lot of people have actually seen the seminar where Al Snow did a seminar that's on YouTube. You can go look it up. And he's basically saying, finishers aren't finishers anymore. Because the finisher is designed to be to finish the match. And if you kick out of somebody's finisher, that completely kills that finisher. And how many times do we see kickouts of finishers now? It's like every single match.
Yeah.
You'll see a finisher, kick out. So how is that a finisher? And then also, and I've been doing shameless plug for my TikTok. Go follow my TikTok. No. But I've been doing kind of a mini series on there of like, I call it Welcome to Pro Wrestling, basically a beginner's guide to like, your first like year in training and whatever. And I shared this the other day that a lot of people will tell you in wrestling is your pacing to slow down. And that's what a lot of like young wrestlers now don't do. they don't give the fans time to register what's going on. And that's one of the good things that Hogan used to do. You know, he would, hulk up and he would, do the leg drop and sell it. And, it gave enough time after he slammed Andre to really give you that time to like realize what just happened. Whereas now, you go to an indie show and you'll see somebody do like 37 moves in like 2 seconds. And it's like, you don't have time to really grasp what just happened. So right there, fans are just kind of gonna get complacent and like just want more and more and more when they really don't need more and more and more. They just need you to slow down as a worker and give them time to take in what you're doing. Do a big move and sell it. Don't just go move, 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 move. Roll up, pin. Done. What is the point of even having a match at that point? Because the fans aren't going to take anything away from it.
Yeah, I think too. We're seeing with like the popularity of NXT and even the popularity of like the indies and AEW being what AEW is too, almost being like almost like a hybrid of both. A hybrid of kind of like the indies and kind of that mainstream what WWE does. It's interesting because we're seeing kind of casual fans get into wrestling now. Get into the moves and get into almost like the storytelling, which I feel like back in the day, as we say often, you couldn't get a casual fan to really get into that stuff. It was just about kind of what the buildup was, and I find that very interesting, and it kind of makes me think that like because I mean obviously right now, given the pandemic, wrestling's like the only live sport on right now. A lot of places are going into their like phase twos and stuff like that, and opening back up a little bit more. Which, in my opinion, I don't know if it's going to be a long lasting thing because people were hard headed before, so I don't necessarily see it lasting long. So it may not be something that we shouldn't like be like, oh man, things are back, and then we're back. We're back in that square one again. So with wrestling being kind of the only live sport that we're seeing from week to week, over and over again, it's interesting because it's kind of maybe even forcing people to watch wrestling a little bit more and get back into it and see what it's all about again. And the interesting part of that is you're kind of seeing different opinions, I think, than what we were used to seeing before, when everything else in the entire world was on.
Yeah, and I think that like you said kind of helps it because before the pandemic, you had wrestling, you had whatever other sport was going on at the time, you had all this stuff, so you had to kind of like pick and choose whatever you were going to watch. And a lot of times people weren't going to pick WWE or even AEW or NXT to watch. They were going to pick, the football game or the basketball game or whatever. Now you really don't have that option. You only have pro wrestling. So it's now it's, am I going to watch NXT or AEW? And a lot of people now have two TVs set up so they're watching both simultaneously, which in a way is a good thing. But that brings up also, I think a lot of like, especially WWE is kind of killing the business for themselves because, and we've talked about this too, they don't really have that competition anymore. They bought their competition when they bought WCW. Nothing has come close. And you could argue maybe AEW, we're still way too early into that to know. And WWE really hasn't really even mentioned it or even like admitted that they're there yet.
Yeah, well, the interesting part of that is I don't know if they are there yet because it's funny because everybody's like, especially the people who are like anti WWE and very much so anyone else but WWE, a lot of people are like, they're gonna come in and do this, that, and the third, And obviously that's wishful thinking because everybody who's tried to come up against WWE has struggled to do so. But it's interesting because what we're seeing is AEW is more competing with NXT, not necessarily the main roster of WWE. Which the crazy part about that is if the main and I don't know if this is true because I haven't looked at ratings to even know, but if the main roster is out selling and getting more viewership on a week to week basis than AEW and NXT, even though there's plenty of people that would argue that NXT and AEW have the better in terms of product, storyline, delivery, and everything like that. It's just Raw, Raw and SmackDown have the names. Then imagine if WWE smartened up and adopted the same style that NXT had or AEW had. And not necessarily even AEW because WWE doesn't want to be AEW, but they have their own, developmental, as we call it, and their own really good products underneath them in their umbrella. If they would just develop with the talent that came from the same place. So if they would just develop, I just feel like for WWE, the sky could be the limit if they just would adopt that style. Because, I think a big majority of us look at NXT and we're like, NXT is the future and all this, but we're also like, we really hope that Raw and SmackDown and these main roster shows adopt that mindset. And a lot of it's not even, I don't even know if it's the in-ring work. Some of it's just the storytelling of it. Some of it's just the storyline within it. Some of it's just the delivery of it. It's weird because it's like the slippery slope of obviously WWE wants to be sports entertainment-y and everything else, but then NXT almost brings like the sport out of it. It almost like, but WWE focuses on the entertainment aspect of sports entertainment, whereas NXT and the same company as WWE focuses on the sport aspect of the sports entertainment aspect of it. So it's like if you could find either a good mesh or just swap them, I feel like that's the key right there. Because like as much as we bash the wrestling in the Attitude Era, there were still some really good wrestlers in the Attitude Era. There was the Rock and Stone Cold are not slouches by any means. Holding up that era. Even some of the matches that we've seen Vince McMahon have to put on, he did it to the best of his ability for not even being a wrestler. And obviously you had guys, the Ken Shamrocks and stuff like that who actually were really good wrestlers. So it's like now I feel like there's more talent. There's more talent than probably WWE number one knows what to do with, and probably has ever had, and more, as Rabbit would say, pure wrestlers. But it feels like they're not letting those guys do what they need to do.
And I almost feel like WWE trying to be a monopoly in the wrestling business is hurting themselves. Because they sign all of these guys and they have so many all of these superstars, and it's like, how many of them are they actually using to their full potential? How many guys have gone through NXT and maybe if they're lucky made it to the main roster, floundered there because WWE didn't do anything with them and they got released? So at the end of the day, what was the point of even signing them when you weren't going to do anything with them? You just wanted to sign them so that another company couldn't have them.
They almost need a bridge writer too. Like you need someone who maybe doesn't write for either one, but he's heavily involved both ways. So then when Shinsuke Nakamura comes up to the main roster, you know what to do with him because you saw the proper things to do with him in NXT. Sami Zayn and all these other guys, Kevin Owens, all these other guys who really aren't even being used. Like a lot of the you got like Rollins. Rollins is probably the key story from the whole from NXT. I feel like out of everybody, Yeah, and I mean Drew's been doing pretty good too, but it's just kind of like it's almost like what's missing. It's like if it's this simple for us to figure out, then why like we're not in like I mean you're in the business, but you're still even I mean, even from in terms of being in the business, you're still fairly new to the business. You
Yeah.
know about the business. You've been a fan of the business forever. So it's interesting because it's like if we can figure it out and literally just listen to our friends talk and our colleagues talk about kind of what they feel is missing, then why can't WWE do that?
Well, and like you were saying before, WWE is its own thing. AEW is its own thing, and WWE doesn't want to be AEW, and AEW doesn't want to be WWE. But I feel like first of all, with AEW, like I said, we don't know yet if it's really set in stone and gonna last. There's a certain period, and we've seen this with countless promotions that have come and gone. There's a certain period you have to, like a hump you have to get over to say, okay, we're established, we're here for the long run. And a lot of these companies want to be so different. I almost think, in a way, you kind of just gotta be very similar to WWE, but try to do WWE better than WWE does.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to be this crazy new thing. Be WWE because that's what is established. That is what's everyone knows.
And stood the
But be
test
a
of
better
time.
version.
Yeah, and stood the test of time too.
It's almost like look at Target and Walmart. They are basically the same store. It's just okay. Target will do something a little bit better for a while, and then Walmart will do something a little bit better for a while. It's constant back and forth. At the end of the day, they are very similar, extremely similar. They basically have all the same stuff, just different brands. There's not many things that you can get at Walmart that you can't get at Target, or that you can get at Target that you can't get at Walmart. Really. So it's like, do that mentality. Try to be WWE, a better version of WWE.
Right. Yeah, I think and I think too, like looking at AEW, if we're saying that's the closest that, like, it seems like everything that's close is missing something, right? Like I mean, even with WWE is missing something. Obviously, even though they're the top company, there's something missing to keep casual eyes on it. Besides a pandemic that forces other people to watch it. With AEW, there's even to me, this big wrestling fan, there's something missing to me. I don't watch it every week. There's something missing. Um, you know, with Impact, there's something missing. With New Japan, there's just something. There's something, one little thing that's missing, and I can't even really pinpoint what it is.
Well, I mean, to me, like, I think there's always been something missing in any era. There's never been a perfect wrestling product. There's never been a perfect period for wrestling. Um, but where the Attitude Era, we always say, didn't have the best in-ring wrestling. It was more like the sort of Jerry Springer kind of aspect of it, like, oh, what's gonna happen? I think that's what one of the things that wrestling is missing now is, like, how many times in the Attitude Era did Raw end on kind of sort of a cliffhanger that made you want to, oh man, what's gonna happen next week? Oh man. And like they would recap and they would, get you excited. And another thing, this is what we've talked about a lot too, is back at like in the Attitude Era, even the Ruthless Aggression era for a while there, they would promote matches that were gonna happen next week. They don't do that anymore. So why am I getting excited? Why am I gonna be excited about watching next week if if there's nothing to grab me to really say, oh man, I gotta watch Raw this week. I gotta watch SmackDown this week. They're just not doing that.
Well, and two, we're seeing a lot of, I don't know, like it's just like you said, there's not a lot of like cliffhangers. There's not a lot of like wrestling needs its cliffhangers. It's shocking all moments. Like when's the last time that you watched wrestling? You were like, whoa, like you were
Yeah.
like, what? And a little bit of that is the whole kayfabe thing and social media and all of that. But at the same time, some of it's your execution. When Edge came out at Royal Rumble, I mean, everybody was like, no. I mean, you still heard rumors, maybe, possibly, right? But like, it wasn't like a set in stone thing. So it's like, I mean, what do you do? It's hard because on one hand you got social media that's like that almost kills everything in a way. It almost spoils everything, especially for wrestling. But then again, we still have those moments that make us say, "What?" Like even the freaking as crazy as it was in the Money in the Bank when they threw Alistair and Ray off the freaking side of like we were like, what?
Yeah.
Stuff like that that like doesn't even seem like it's like possible per se, right? But it's that type of stuff that like you need a little bit more of. You need a little bit more of that type of stuff. I think there has to be a balance between the realism of making us feel like it's a sport, but also, like you said, the shock and awe of the entertainment of it that we also know and love. I mean, and even with like the 24/7 championship stuff, it's been hilarious. Like it's been hilarious. Even like just adding that in has given, I think, Raw and even SmackDown at times too something just different. Something that just we hadn't had. As ugly as the title may be, something that we just haven't had that like we've needed. We've needed that little bit of what the heck is R-Truth gonna do next? We need that little, where is this title gonna be defended at next?
Yeah, and I think another thing you brought up with like the social media, I think the internet itself has been kind of a double-edged sword because for workers it's fantastic. Before the internet you had to like have, make tapes of your highlights and hopefully find the promoter of a show and like hopefully give them your tapes and hopefully they would watch them, whatever. Now you have Instagram, you have Twitter, you have your Facebook page, all that stuff. It's so easy to kind of just you send YouTube videos to people, to promoters, whatever. At the same time, the one of the good things about the Attitude Era was, it was like late 90s, early 2000s, and that really doesn't seem that long ago if you really think about it. But the internet back then was not even close to what it is today. So you didn't have, I mean, you had message boards and things like that, but you didn't have Twitter, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have Facebook and MySpace to instantly, send spoilers and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, like you had like WWF.com and stuff like that, which I miss, and I miss WWFshop.com. It's the little things I miss. But it kind of helps that like you didn't have these spoilers back then, so you didn't know if something was gonna happen. You know, the only spoilers you might have had is like, oh, your friend might have seen a certain superstar at a hotel or something, and they would call you or they would send you a text message or something, and like, oh, oh, he's gonna be at Raw, but it wasn't like, spoilers on Twitter or spoilers on Facebook or whatever. So I think that was a benefit of, the not having the access to the internet that we have now. And it's even funny when you go back and watch like late 90s pay-per-views when like they would have WWE superstars on the WWE like talk line or whatever, or like the chat line, and they would have like the old computers and stuff. And like I love watching that stuff from back then, because it's like looking at the stuff we have now, and like again, it doesn't seem like that was that long ago. But it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So long story short, once again, that's the main question of the video. You know, what's keeping wrestling from being where I think it wants to be? You know, and when I say that, what's keeping wrestling from being what the NFL is, right? Being what the NBA is. Because at the end of the day, you don't necessarily you're never going to get everybody to watch. But when you can when you can be the highest viewed sport, you feel pretty good, NFL. You feel pretty good. So what is the NFL doing that WWE is not? What are they hitting? What boxes are they ticking that WWE isn't? Or
I think it's also almost the simplicity. If you really think about football, what is football? Two teams trying to get a football down a field to score a touchdown or a field goal. Mm-hmm. One team against another. There's nothing crazy about it. There's nothing like, it's simple. It is one of the simplest things you can figure out. Even basketball, two teams trying to get down the court and shoot a ball into a basket. Simple. There's characters like, in football and in basketball, back in the day, there was, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, all these like crazy characters and stuff like that. I mean, we had in the NFL, you had Chad Ochocinco, you had all these crazy, guys, but that doesn't change the simplicity of what football and what basketball is. And I think that helps it a lot. There's not really that much to think about. It's like, okay, what's your favorite team? Okay, you're a Ravens fan. I'm a Colts fan. Simple as that. You root for your team. It's not, oh man, this storyline's great, but it would have been better if they did this or they did that. And I mean, to an extent, like people do that with like coaching and stuff. Like, oh man, he should have run the ball here. He should have done that. But it's the simplicity of it. Like, keep it simple, stupid. That kind of thing. That's what, like, because at the end of the day, with social media and with all this stuff, we have such short attention spans. So you almost need simple stuff to kind of keep our attention.
Yeah. And I think to piggyback on that point, NXT is about as simple as you can get. Yeah. It's developmental, so it's dumbed down, right? Like it's supposed to be simpler. So what is NXT? Why is NXT so popular? You put the brand of WWE behind it. You put that, that brand, that big brand that we all know and sometimes love behind it. And I mean, think about it. I'm trying to think of one of the simple storylines that they've had, or one of the big feuds that they had, or something like that. But it's like, in a way, it all comes back to, I want to be the best. And what I got to do to be the best, I got to beat the best. At the end of the day, that's what it.
I feel like one of the more recent, like, simplest, like, stories and simplest things they've done is Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa.
Right.
Simple. You put two fantastic wrestlers together who know each other, inside and out. You give a storyline that makes sense, oh, you turned on me, whatever, that kind of thing. you don't need any more.
Right. But I mean, and like you said, just the obsession of being the best, right? Just the obsession of being the champion. Tommaso won the championship. Gargano's like, well, I ain't done that yet. I got to go win now. And then, Gargano finds it within himself to win the title, and they just keep it going, and unfortunate injuries, injuries suck, but sometimes injuries extend the storyline a little bit. So I think that's a very key point. Like you said, just keeping it simple, I think is the best bet. I think a lot of times, and especially with like the attention spans and how how kind of particular wrestling fans are, I think sometimes WWE and even these other companies too try so hard to like entertain when really you just gotta, just dumb it down for us and we'll be right back in your good graces again.
Well, I mean, you can also equate it to like technology in a way. Like for me and a lot of people now.
Casey, if you say you still got a flip phone, we gonna have to get,
Hold up. I got this. Got this right here.
I think I still got mine with the what is it? It was an LG. It was one of the first LG phones that had a little spinny wheel on it. I remember that,
but I mean, like, certain companies are bringing back simple phones, and that's what some people want now. They want to go back to simplicity. And for me, I've always liked Apple, and I've always liked, Mac operating systems, because to me it's simple. I don't need an Android that, I can customize this, I can customize that, I can do this, that. I want simplicity. I want something that I recognize, that I know how to use. I don't need to learn a whole new phone. Goes back to wrestling. Something simple you already know. You don't need to, learn something else. You don't need to learn a different match style, and I mean, having new things come in is good, but all in all, you want to kind of keep it simple. I joked about it a while back that, they still explain the rules of like the Royal Rumble that we've known for like 30 years. But I mean, it's simple and it. That's the thing. Like, that's why it's lasted the test of time, because people know it, people love it. It's simple. It's not like TNA's Reverse Battle Royal that I still don't understand. And that's been like, what, 12 years?
Or the King of the Mountain, where you take the belt and you climb up the ladder and then hang the belt up just to pull the belt back down and bring it back home. Even though I didn't see it on match, but nonetheless.
I mean, you can innovate simple ideas and make them a little bit different. Like, at the end of the day, Ultimate X match is just a ladder match. Without a ladder, you just, climb the crossing cables.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea. You're just trying to get the belt down. You're not trying to do anything crazy, like, bring the belt down and then put the ladder up and then put the belt back up and then do 3 laps around the building and then give the high five. Like, come on now, just calm it down. Or my favorite match of all time, who was it? I can't think of his name right now. Judy Bagwell on a pole match. That one. That one.
Yeah.
Greatest match of all time.
That's the one right there. That's keeping it simple right there. That's the one. But
you just put somebody mama on a pole that wasn't a pole. It was a forklift.
But anyway, as we get ready to sign off, we'll probably have a part 2, like we said, on this kind of discussion. I don't know if we'll talk as much because we've already kind of given our thoughts on everything, unless they just say something that obviously is worth us responding to. We'll probably let them have
We'll just sit here in silence as they talk.
We'll go with the Justin method. Yeah. You know. But anyway, we'll see you guys on the next video. Be sure to follow us on Twitter.cw_podcast. If you want to just listen to the podcast, it'll be up on Anchor first and foremost, and then Anchor will send it out to a whole bunch of other places like Spotify and stuff like that. So anywhere, if you search it, you're probably gonna find it. You probably got. I mean, we Googleified now, brother. We Googleified. I feel like that's something that Casey would have said. One of his made up words.
So if I Googleify us, I'm gonna find us.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I'm gonna look on the Google machine right after this.
But anyway, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you.